Before you watch this story, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel right now. What you're about to witness is one of the most incredible discoveries you'll ever hear about. A single dad buys an abandoned farmhouse to give his daughter a better life, and weeks later, he discovers two strange women living inside. But what they reveal will completely change his understanding of what it means to be family. This story will absolutely shock you. Trust me, you need to see this. Michael Torres was a single father working as a construction supervisor in Los Angeles. He had a daughter, Emma, who was 8 years old. His wife had passed away when Emma was 3, and for 5 years, Michael had been raising Emma alone, working hard, and trying to give her a good life. But the apartment they lived in was cramped and noisy. It was in a dangerous neighborhood. Michael wanted something better for his daughter. He wanted space. He wanted fresh air. He wanted Emma to have a childhood where she could play outside safely and grow up in a healthy environment. When Michael was offered a job as a foreman for a large construction company building homes in rural Oregon, he decided to make the move. With his savings and a loan from the bank, Michael bought an abandoned farmhouse on 10 acres of land. The house was old and needed work, but it had potential. More importantly, it had land, space, and opportunity. Michael spent his first few weeks fixing up the house. He fixed the roof. He repaired the plumbing. He painted the walls. He was turning it into a home for him and Emma. Then, one night, Michael heard a sound coming from the old barn on the property. It sounded like someone was in there. Michael grabbed a flashlight and went to investigate. When he opened the barn door, his flashlight revealed two women sitting around a small campfire. They looked terrified and ready to run. One woman was older, probably in her 60s. The other was younger, probably in her 30s. "Please don't call the police," the older woman said immediately, holding up her hands. "We didn't mean to trespass. We just needed a safe place to stay." Michael was shocked. Two women had been living in his barn without his knowledge. Michael's first instinct was to call the police. He thought these women might be criminals or dangerous. But something about their fear and their desperation made him pause. "Who are you?" Michael asked, keeping his distance. "How long have you been living in my barn?" The older woman took a deep breath. "My name is Margaret," she said. "This is my daughter, Claire. We've been living in your barn for about 3 weeks." 3 weeks? Michael said, shocked. "I've been here fixing up the house for 3 weeks. And you've been living in my barn the whole time?" "Yes," Margaret said. "We found the barn when we were looking for shelter. It's been raining a lot, and we needed somewhere to sleep that was dry. We were quiet because we didn't want to bother you. We've been trying to figure out our next move." Michael looked at the two women more carefully. They looked tired. They looked malnourished. They looked scared. They didn't look like criminals. "Why are you living in a barn?" Michael asked. "Where are your families? Why don't you have a home?" Margaret and Claire exchanged glances. It seemed like they were deciding whether to trust Michael with their story. "We're homeless," Margaret finally said. "We had a home, but we lost it. We have nowhere else to go." Michael understood homelessness. He'd almost been homeless himself years ago when Emma's mother had died. He remembered how close he'd come to not having a place to live. He remembered how terrifying it had been. "Come inside the house," Michael said. "It's cold out here. You can't stay in a barn. Let me get you inside where it's warm, and you can tell me your story." Margaret and Claire were hesitant, but they gathered their meager belongings and followed Michael into the farmhouse. Michael made them hot tea. He found some food in his kitchen and prepared a simple meal for them. They sat around the kitchen table, and Margaret began to tell her story. Margaret had been a teacher for 30 years. She'd been married, had 2 children, Claire and another son. Her husband had passed away 15 years ago. For years, Margaret had managed on her own. But then she'd started having health problems. Medical bills had piled up. She'd gotten behind on her mortgage. Claire had been married too, with 2 children. But her husband had been abusive. Claire had left him to protect her children, but the custody battle had been long and expensive. Legal fees had drained her savings. Eventually, She'd lost custody of her children to her ex-husband because she couldn't afford to continue the legal fight. Both Margaret and Claire had lost everything. They'd lost their homes, their savings, and in Claire's case, her children. They'd been living on the streets for almost a year, trying to survive, trying to figure out what to do next. "We were just looking for a safe place to sleep," Margaret said. "We didn't mean to invade your property. We know it's wrong. We know you could call the police and have us arrested, but we're just trying to get back on our feet." Michael listened to their story, and his heart broke for them. He understood their pain. He understood how close he'd come to being in a similar situation. "I'm not going to call the police," Michael said, "and I'm not going to throw you out." Michael made a decision that surprised even himself. He offered Margaret and Claire a place to stay in his farmhouse while they got back on their feet. "I have room," Michael explained. "I have more space than I need. And frankly, I could use some help fixing up this house. If you're willing to help, you can stay here. We'll figure out food and everything else as we go." Margaret and Claire were shocked by his generosity. They'd been expecting to be thrown out, arrested, or worse. Instead, this stranger was offering them shelter and opportunity. "Why would you do this for us?" Claire asked, tears streaming down her face. "You don't know us. We could be dangerous." "You're not dangerous," Michael said simply. "You're people who've had bad luck and bad timing. And I've been there. I've been one crisis away from being homeless. I know how it feels. So yes, I'm going to help you." Over the next few weeks, Margaret and Claire became part of Michael's household. They helped fix up the farmhouse. They helped with cooking and cleaning. They became part of his and Emma's daily life. Emma, Michael's 8-year-old daughter, formed an immediate bond with Margaret. Emma would follow Margaret around, asking her questions, listening to her stories. Margaret became like a grandmother to Emma. Claire helped Michael with the heavier construction work. She was stronger and more capable than she looked. She'd learned how to do repairs and renovations. Together, they fixed up the house. But more importantly, Michael noticed something changing in Margaret and Claire. They started to feel safe. They started to believe in the possibility of a future. They started to think about what came next. Margaret decided to look for work as a teacher's aide or in some kind of educational position. Her degree was old, but her love of teaching and her knowledge was still valuable. She started filling out applications. Claire decided to pursue training in a trade. She discovered she had a talent for construction and repair work. Michael suggested she pursue a certification in carpentry or plumbing. Claire was interested. She started researching programs. Michael helped them both find resources. He found a non-profit that provided job training for women in difficult circumstances. He helped Margaret get recertified to teach. He encouraged Claire to pursue her interests. Months passed. Margaret got a job at a local elementary school as a teacher's aide. It didn't pay much, but it was work she loved. Claire completed a carpentry certification program and got a job at a local construction company. Both women were working now. Both women were rebuilding their lives. Both women had found hope. But something unexpected happened during this process. Michael, Margaret, and Claire became genuine friends. They became family. Emma had formed deep bonds with both women. She called Margaret Grandma Margaret and called Claire Aunt Claire. They were the women who'd helped raise her, who'd cared for her, who'd been present in her life. Michael realized that by opening his home to two strangers, he'd given his daughter something she'd been missing, a family. He'd given himself something he'd been missing, a sense of community and connection. One evening, as they were all sitting together after dinner, Margaret said something that made Michael cry. "You saved our lives," Margaret said. "Claire and I were on a path that was only going to get worse. We were losing hope. We were starting to believe that there was no future for us. And then you found us in your barn, and you gave us shelter, and you believed in us when we didn't believe in ourselves." She looked at Michael with gratitude and love. "You didn't just give us a place to stay," Margaret continued. "You gave us our lives back. You gave us hope. You gave us family." 3 years after Michael had found Margaret and Claire living in his barn, their lives had transformed completely. Margaret was now working full-time as a teacher and was starting to think about pursuing her teaching credentials again so she could teach full-time instead of just as an aide. She was living in a small cottage on Michael's property that they'd renovated together. She had savings. She had stability. She had hope. Claire was working as a master carpenter and had even started her own small carpentry business with a partner. She was earning good money. She'd moved into another small cottage on the property. She was dating a kind man she'd met through work. She was thinking about possibly working toward custody of her children again, though she knew that would be a long process. Emma was now 11 years old and thriving. She had a father who loved her, a grandmother figure who cared for her, and an aunt figure who guided her. She had a loving, unconventional family that had been formed not through blood, but through circumstance and choice. Michael had kept his job as a construction foreman, but he was also thinking about starting a larger project. He was thinking about renovating more farmhouses and creating affordable housing for people who were struggling. He was thinking about replicating what had worked with Margaret and Claire, providing shelter, opportunity, and belief in people who were trying to rebuild their lives. The local community had started to notice what Michael was doing. They noticed that he'd taken in 2 homeless women and helped them get back on their feet. They noticed that he was kind and generous. They noticed that he was making a difference. A local journalist heard about Michael's story and came to interview him. The journalist wrote an article about how Michael had found 2 women living in his barn and had given them shelter and opportunity. The article was published in the local newspaper and was picked up by regional media outlets. Suddenly, Michael was being recognized as a hero. People were calling him, wanting to help. Local contractors offered to donate time to help renovate farmhouses for affordable housing. Local businesses offered to donate materials. Local organizations offered to help with training and job placement. Michael's simple act of kindness, opening his home to 2 strangers, had sparked something bigger. It had sparked a movement around affordable housing and support for people experiencing homelessness. But Michael was careful not to take too much credit. He made sure that Margaret and Claire were recognized as part of the story. He made sure that their contributions and their resilience were acknowledged. "I didn't save them," Michael told the journalist. "They saved themselves. I just gave them space and opportunity to do it." Margaret and Claire did the real work. They got the jobs. They rebuilt their lives. They became part of our family. Margaret and Claire gave interviews too. They talked about what it had felt like to be homeless. They talked about the shame and the fear and the hopelessness. They talked about how Michael's simple gesture of kindness had changed everything. "There are thousands of people living on the streets right now," Margaret said in one interview. "Most of them are people like me and Claire, people who've had bad luck, who've faced medical crises or family crises or job crises. They are not criminals. They are not dangerous. They are just people who need a hand up, not a handout." She paused, looking directly at the interviewer. "What Michael did for us, giving us shelter, believing in us, helping us get back on our feet, is something that should be happening everywhere," Margaret continued. "There should be more people like Michael. There should be more communities that have compassion for people who are struggling." 5 years after finding Margaret and Claire in his barn, Michael had created a non-profit organization called Second Home. The organization purchased abandoned farmhouses and renovated them to provide affordable housing for people experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity. But it wasn't just about providing housing. The organization also provided job training, financial counseling, mental health support, and mentorship. The goal wasn't just to house people temporarily, but to help them rebuild their lives completely. Margaret was now the director of education programs for Second Home. She developed curriculum and training programs for people trying to get back into the workforce. Claire was the director of housing renovation. She oversaw the renovation of farmhouses and trained people on construction skills. Emma, now a teenager, volunteered with the organization, helping people who were moving into the renovated farmhouses. The organization had helped over 500 people get housing, job training, and support. 500 people had gone from living on the streets to having stable homes and jobs. But Michael's proudest achievement wasn't a number. His proudest achievement was the community he'd created. He'd created a place where people who'd been rejected by society were welcomed and valued. He'd created a place where people who'd lost hope could find it again. One day, Michael received a visit from a young woman named Jennifer. Jennifer had come through the Second Home program 2 years ago. She'd been homeless with her 2 young children. She'd lived in one of Michael's renovated farmhouses. She'd received job training and mentorship. Now Jennifer was standing in front of Michael in a professional outfit, holding a briefcase, ready to start a new job as an office manager at a local company. "I wanted to thank you before I started my new job," Jennifer said, tears streaming down her face. "I wanted to tell you that you saved my life. My children and I had nowhere to go. We were living in our car. I thought I would lose custody of my children because I couldn't provide for them. But you gave us shelter. You gave us hope. You gave us a second chance." Jennifer hugged Michael. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life paying this forward," Jennifer said. "I'm going to help other people the way you helped me." Stories like Jennifer's were happening all the time. People who'd gone through Second Home were now helping others. They were volunteering. They were mentoring. They were becoming advocates for affordable housing and support for homeless people. Michael had created more than just a housing organization. He'd created a movement of compassion and support that was spreading throughout the community and beyond. At a community event honoring Michael's work, Margaret stood up to speak. "I've known Michael for 5 years now," Margaret said. "I've watched him turn his simple farmhouse into a beacon of hope for hundreds of people. I've watched him create something beautiful out of what could have been a tragic situation." She looked at Michael with love and gratitude. What Michael understands, what many people don't understand, is that homelessness isn't a personal failing, Margaret continued. It's a systems failure. It's a failure of society to provide enough affordable housing, enough mental health support, enough job opportunities for people. Michael can't fix all of that by himself, but he can show what's possible when one person decides to care, to help, to believe in people who've been written off by society. Margaret paused. "And his inspired all of us to do the same," she concluded. "All of us who've been through Second Home, all of us who are part of this community, we're all committed to paying it forward, to helping others, to creating the kind of world where people don't have to live in barns or cars, where people have homes and hope and opportunity." The audience stood up and applauded. Michael sat there, thinking about that night 5 years ago when he'd found 2 women living in his barn. He thought about how that one moment of compassion had led to 5 years of impact. He thought about how choosing to help instead of calling the police had changed everything. He thought about all the people who were now housed because of that decision. He thought about all the children who now had stable homes because their parents had been given opportunity and support. He thought about the ripple effect of one person choosing kindness. Michael understood something profound that night. He understood that everything we do matters. He understood that one act of compassion can change lives. He understood that by helping others, we help ourselves. He understood that building community and connection is the most important work we can do. Years later, when people asked Michael why he'd helped Margaret and Claire, why he'd opened his home to 2 strangers, his answer was always the same. Because they needed help, and I could help. It's that simple. We all have the capacity to help someone. We all have the ability to make a difference. The question is whether we choose to use that ability or not. #Bullseye final call to action. If this story moved you, if it made you think about compassion, about community, and about the power of one person to create change, then I need you to do something right now. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone. It could be someone who has resources and is wondering how to use them to help others, someone who's struggling and needs to know that help is available, or someone who needs to be reminded that homelessness is a systemic issue that we can all help address. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss these stories about compassion, community, and changing lives. Because here's the truth. There are millions of people experiencing homelessness right now. They are not all criminals or drug addicts. Many of them are people who've faced medical crises, job loss, family breakdown, or bad luck. Many of them are working people who still can't afford housing. Many of them are children who had no choice in their circumstances. If you have a spare room, consider hosting someone through an organization like Second Home. If you can't host someone, consider volunteering, helping with renovations, job training, or mentorship. If you can't volunteer your time, consider donating money to organizations that help homeless people. If you can't donate money, consider advocating for policies that provide affordable housing and support for people experiencing homelessness. Everyone has the ability to help someone. Everyone can make a difference. The question is what you choose to do with that ability. If you're experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity, please reach out for help. There are organizations and people ready to support you. Look for nonprofits in your area, call 211 to find local resources, or reach out to churches and community organizations. You deserve help. You deserve housing. You deserve hope. Leave a comment below and tell us, have you ever helped someone in a difficult situation? Have you experienced homelessness or housing insecurity? Have you witnessed an act of kindness that changed someone's life? Have you thought about the issue of homelessness in your community? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might inspire someone else to help someone in need. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We release new stories every single week about real people who helped others, who created communities of compassion, and who changed lives through simple acts of kindness. We'll see you in the next video. Stay compassionate, stay involved, and remember, one act of kindness can change a life, and one life changed can start a movement. Thank you so much for watching.